The ships came on a Tuesday morning. Admiral Taiho Park stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the sky turn dark. There were so many alien vessels that they blocked the sun. He had fought in many wars during his 62 years of life, but he had never seen anything like this. The aliens called themselves the Valdori Hegemony. They were not one species but 12, and they had ruled this part of the galaxy for 40,000 years. To them, humans were nothing. Less than nothing. They were just another primitive species to add to their collection. Their leader, Lord Korath, sent a message to every screen on Earth. His face was pale and smooth, with no nose and 4 black eyes. His voice was cold like metal. Species 7291. You are primitive. You are now property of the hegemony. Do not resist. You belong to us. Taiho ordered his fleet to attack. Every ship fired at once. Missiles flew toward the alien vessels. Plasma cannons lit up the darkness, but nothing happened. The weapons hit the alien shields and disappeared like rain falling into the ocean. The aliens did not even bother to fire back. They just waited until humanity ran out of ammunition. Then they came down to Earth, in Seoul. Dr. Yuna Kim watched the invasion from her underground laboratory. She was a scientist who studied physics, and she understood immediately that humanity had no chance. The aliens were thousands of years ahead in technology. Fighting them was like ants fighting humans. Her husband, Sunwoo, was a pilot in the defense fleet. She had talked to him that morning before the ships arrived. He had promised to come home for dinner. Now his ship was floating dead in space, captured by the enemy. She did not know if he was alive or dead. The Valdori did not want to destroy humanity. They wanted to use them. Within 3 days, they had taken control of every major city. They rounded up humans like cattle and put them in camps. Then they began the sorting. Strong humans were sent to mining colonies on distant planets. Smart humans were kept for technical work. Beautiful humans were taken for purposes that no one wanted to think about. The old and the sick were simply killed because they had no use. But the worst part was the chip. Every human over the age of 12 received a small device implanted in their brain. The Valdori called it a compliance chip. If a human tried to resist, tried to fight, or even thought too hard about rebellion, the chip activated. The pain was beyond description. People who experienced it said it felt like fire burning inside their skull. Most humans learned very quickly to obey. The Earth Defense Council surrendered officially on the 5th day. The president, the generals, the leaders of every nation knelt before Lord Korath and accepted humanity's new role. They were slaves now, property, things to be used and thrown away. Yuna watched the surrender on a screen in her bunker. She felt something cold and hard growing inside her chest. It was not fear. It was not sadness. It was rage. She was not alone. In bunkers and basements, in hidden places across the world, some humans refused to accept their fate. General Daesun Cho, an old soldier who had escaped capture, gathered these survivors together. They met in secret, moving from place to place, always one step ahead of the alien patrols. Among them was a young engineer named Hannah Lee. She had been studying the compliance chips taken from dead humans. One night she called an emergency meeting. "I found something," she said. Her voice was shaking with excitement. "The chips can be disabled. There is a specific frequency of electromagnetic energy that destroys them." The room went quiet. Dasun leaned forward. "What is the catch?" Hannah looked down at her hands. "The process is dangerous. When the chip is destroyed, it damages the brain. About 1 in 3 people will die. 1 in 3. Dasung thought about those numbers. If they had 100 volunteers, 33 would die. But 67 would be free. Free to fight. Free to resist. Free to make the aliens pay. "We need volunteers," he said. "People willing to risk death for a chance to fight back." 3,000 humans stepped forward. They came from every country, every background, every walk of life. They were teachers and soldiers, farmers and scientists, young and old. They all had one thing in common. They had lost everything, and they had nothing left to fear. The procedure was done in secret. In the deepest bunker, far beneath the Siberian ice, one by one, the volunteers lay down on a metal table. Hannah activated the device. Some of them screamed. Some of them cried. Some of them died. When it was over, 1,000 humans stood up. Their chips were dead. Their minds were free. And their hearts burned with a hatred that would never go out. They called themselves the Unchained. Admiral Taiho was among them. He had been captured during the invasion and sent to a labor camp on the moon. But his soldiers had rescued him, and he had survived the procedure. Now he looked at his small army of free humans and felt something he had not felt in months. Hope. We cannot win a straight fight, he told them. They have millions of ships. We have nothing. But we have something they do not expect. We have the will to fight even when fighting is hopeless. We have the courage to die for our freedom. And we have rage. So much rage that it will burn across the stars. Yuna stood in the back of the room, listening. She had survived the procedure too, and she had already begun working on something. A weapon. Something that would make the aliens regret the day they ever heard of Earth. Sun Wu was dead. She had learned that 2 weeks ago. He had died in the mines of a planet called Proximo 3, worked to death like an animal. She had cried for one night. Then she had stopped crying and started working. The Valdori thought humans were primitive. They thought humans were weak. They thought they could chain humanity forever. They were wrong. 5 years passed under Valdor rule. Humanity was scattered across 100 different worlds like dust in the wind. They mined rocks on frozen asteroids. They built ships in orbital factories. They cleaned floors and carried loads and did whatever their masters told them to do. The average human slave lived for 18 months before dying from work or punishment or simple despair. But the Unchained survived, and they grew. Captain Minho Beak was a young man with quick hands and cold eyes. Before the invasion, he had been a mechanic. Now, he was a killer. He led a team of 12 fighters on raids against Valdori supply ships. They would appear from nowhere, strike fast, now disappear before the enemy could respond. The aliens did not understand how it was possible. Their sensors could not detect human ships. Their weapons could not hit human targets. It was as if the humans had become ghosts. The secret was Yuna. For 5 years, she had worked in a hidden laboratory beneath the ice of Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. She had taken apart every piece of Valdori technology she could find. She had studied it. She had learned it. And then she had improved it. Their plasma weapons do not work in human hands, she explained to Minho during one of his visits. The weapons are connected to the user's brain patterns. Valdori brains are different from human brains. So I built an adapter. She held up a small device no bigger than a coin. Put this on the weapon, and it thinks you are Valdor. Now human soldiers can use alien guns. Minho took the adapter and smiled. It was not a happy smile. My sister died in the breeding camps on Kepler 22. She was 15. I am going to kill every alien I can find until they kill me. Yuna understood. Everyone in the Unchained had lost someone. Everyone had a reason to fight. The resistance operated in cells across 40 star systems. Each cell was independent, with its own leaders and its own missions. If one cell was captured, they could not betray the others because they did not know where the others were. Admiral Taiho coordinated everything from Europa, sending coded messages through hidden channels. One of his best operatives was a woman named Bora Shin. She had been a teacher before the invasion. She had taught children how to read and write. Then the Valdori came and took her daughter to a labor camp. Bora followed, pretending to be a compliant slave. She waited for 3 months. Then she killed her overseer with her bare hands and escaped with her daughter. Her daughter died anyway, from a sickness that the Valdori did not bother to treat. Bora did not cry. She just walked into the nearest resistance camp and asked for a weapon. Now she specialized in a different kind of mission. She would infiltrate slave camps and find humans who still had their compliance chips. She would offer them the removal procedure. The survival rate had improved. Yuna had refined the technology, and now only 3 in 10 died instead of 1 in 3. Bora did not care about the numbers. She cared about results. Every human she freed was another soldier for the cause, the Valdori. High Council did not take the resistance seriously at first. They called it livestock misbehavior. They laughed at reports of attacks on supply ships. These were just animals acting up. Nothing to worry about. Then came Operation Blackout. The target was the primary, Valdor's shipyard over a planet called Kepler 44b. This was where the hegemony built its warships. 300 vessels were under construction at any given time, each one capable of destroying a human city in seconds. Minho led the assault team. 53 volunteers. They had stolen Valdor uniforms and identification codes from dead officers. They had spent 6 months planning every detail. Now they put on their disguises and walked through the front door. Security did not stop them. Why would it? The Valdori did not believe humans could be threats. They saw human workers everywhere, doing cleaning and maintenance and other low-level jobs. A few more human faces meant nothing. The team split up. They planted explosive charges in the reactor core, in the fuel storage, in the construction bays. They worked quickly and quietly, avoiding patrols and security cameras. Then they gathered at the escape ship. 41 of them made it. 12 were caught and killed, but it did not matter. When the charges exploded, the entire shipyard vanished in nuclear fire. 300 warships, 2 years of construction, 18,000 Valdori workers. Gone in an instant. The explosion was so bright that it could be seen from neighboring star systems, for the first time in 40,000 years. The hegemony convened an emergency session about a slave species. Lord Korath was furious. His 4 black eyes burned with rage as he addressed the council. These animals have destroyed our greatest shipyard. They have killed our people. This cannot be tolerated. Increase suppression. Triple the guards. For every act of defiance, killed 10 slaves on Earth. In the ruins of Sol, 10,000 humans were executed in response to Operation Blackout. They were lined up in the streets and shot. The bodies were left to rot as a warning. Among the dead were children. The youngest was 4 years old. Yuna watched the broadcast on a screen in her laboratory. Her hands did not shake. Her face showed no emotion. But inside, something changed. Something broke. Or maybe something was finally completed. She turned off the screen and walked to her workstation. She opened a new file and began typing. At the top, she wrote 2 words, Project Wrath. She had been holding back. She had been building weapons that could hurt the Valdori, but not destroy them completely. She had believed that maybe, someday, there could be peace, negotiation, coexistence. Not anymore. Minho found her there hours later, still typing. What are you building? He asked, why UNA did not look up. A weapon that ends civilizations. Minho was silent for a long moment. Then he put his hand on her shoulder. Good. The Valdori had made a mistake. They had thought terror would break humanity. They had thought killing children would crush the resistance. They were wrong. They had just made humanity angrier. And anger in the hands of a genius like Yuna was the most dangerous weapon in the universe. 2 more years passed. The Valdori response to Operation Blackout was brutal and complete. They sterilized 3 human colony worlds from orbit. Their ships rained fire from the sky until nothing was left alive. 40 million humans died in a single week. The message was clear. Resistance meant death. Not just for the rebels, but for everyone. Some humans gave up. They turned in their neighbors to the Valdori patrols. They became informers and collaborators, hoping to survive by betraying their own kind. The Unchained hunted them without mercy, but most humans simply endured. They had no choice. The compliance chips controlled their bodies, and fear controlled their minds. They worked and suffered and died, and they tried not to think about tomorrow. The resistance did not stop. They could not stop. Too many people had died. Too much blood had been spilled. Surrender now would mean that all those deaths meant nothing. General Daesung Cho was 74 years old. His body was failing. He walked with a cane, and some days he could barely breathe. But his mind was still sharp, and he understood something that the younger fighters did not. We cannot win through conventional warfare, he told his commanders during a secret meeting on Europa. The hegemony has 1,000,000 ships. We have maybe 300. If we fight them directly, we will lose.
Hi, Commander.
Commander Hajin Ru. He was the Resistance's chief strategist, a man who had once planned military operations for the Korean government. Then what do you suggest? Daesun turned to Yuna. Show them. Yuna stood up and placed a small device on the table. It was round and smooth, no bigger than a ball. It looked harmless. It looked like a toy. This is a quantum field destabilizer, she said. When activated, it creates a bubble of unstable space. Everything inside that bubble experiences simultaneous molecular breakdown. Ships, stations, planets, everything is reduced to atoms. The room went very quiet. Hajin stared at the device. You are telling me that this thing can destroy a planet? Yes. How is that possible? The energy required would be infinite, Yuna said. Or close to it. That was the problem. The math has existed since the 21st century, but no one could build a power source strong enough. She paused. Until now? She introduced Yoonji Moon, a young woman of 22 with tired eyes and ink-stained fingers. Yoonji had been born into slavery. She had never seen Earth, never known a day of freedom. Her parents had been executed when she was 7 years old for hiding books. She had taught herself physics from stolen data chips, studying in secret while pretending to be a compliant slave, and she had solved the impossible problem. 0-point energy, Yoonji explained. The vacuum of space is not empty. It contains energy at the quantum level. I found a way to extract that energy. The amount is essentially unlimited. Admiral Tai-ho leaned forward. His body was broken now. He was missing an arm, lost to a Valdori interrogator. He sat in a floating chair because his legs no longer worked. But his eyes were still bright with fire. How long until we can produce these weapons at scale? 6 months, Yuna replied. Maybe less. Then we do it, Tai-ho said. We build as many as we can, and then we make them pay. But Yuna held up her hand. There is something we need to discuss first. A moral question. Borishin laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. Moral? They killed my daughter. They killed millions of our children. What morality do we owe them? The weapon does not discriminate, Yuna said carefully. When we use it on a Valdori world, we will not just kill soldiers. We will kill everyone. Civilians, children, beings who never chose to be our enemies. The room fell silent again. General Dae-sung spoke slowly. They declared us livestock. They put chips in our brains. They worked us to death in their minds. They sterilized 3 of our worlds and killed 40 million of our people. When does a cornered animal get to bite back? There has to be a line, Hajin said quietly. Otherwise, what are we fighting for? What makes us different from them? We are fighting for survival, Bora replied. That is what makes us different. They chose to enslave us. We are just choosing to live. Yuna looked around the room. She saw anger in every face. She saw grief that had hardened into hate. She saw people who had lost everything and had nothing left to lose. She thought about Sunwoo, dying alone in an alien mine. She thought about the children executed in Seoul. She thought about 40 million dead on 3 worlds. I will build the weapons, she said finally. What we do with them is a decision for all of us to make together. The vote was unanimous. For the next 6 months, the hidden factories on Europa worked day and night. Yuna and Yoonji led teams of engineers and scientists, all of them former slaves, all of them burning with purpose. They built the devices carefully and precisely, knowing that a single mistake could destroy their entire base. When they were finished, they had 12 weapons. 12 devices no bigger than a ball, each one containing the power to erase a civilization. Admiral Taiho looked at them lined up on a table. Such small things to carry so much destruction. "We send a message first," he said. "We tell them what we have. We give them a chance to surrender." Bora shook her head. "They will not believe us." "No," Taiho agreed. "They will not. But when history judges us, I want it known that we offered them a choice. They will choose wrong. They always do." He was right. The Valdori High Council received the message and laughed. A weapon that could destroy planets? Built by slaves? Impossible. Ridiculous. Typical primitive nonsense. They did not laugh for long. The first target was Malvine Prime. It was the homeworld of Lord Korath's species, the center of Valdori power for 40,000 years. 18 billion beings lived there. Great cities covered its surface. Orbital stations surrounded it like a crown. 2,000 warships guarded its space at all times. It was the most protected place in the galaxy. The Valdori believed it could never fall. Lieutenant Nari Song was 31 years old. She had been a pilot before the invasion, flying cargo ships between Earth and Mars. When the Valdori came, they killed her husband in front of her eyes. They took her 2 sons to a labor camp. She never saw them again. She had volunteered for this mission knowing she would not survive. She did not care. She had nothing left to live for except revenge. Her ship was small and fast, designed for stealth rather than combat. She made the jump into the Malvine system alone. Carrying a single weapon in her cargo hold, the Valdori detected her immediately. 2,000 warships turned their sensors toward her tiny vessel. A command came through her radio, spoken in the cold mechanical voice of a Valdori officer. "Unidentified ship. You are in restricted space. Surrender immediately, or be destroyed." Nari did not answer. She flew straight toward the planet. The warships opened fire. Plasma bolts filled the space around her. Her ship shook and twisted as she dodged through the barrage. Shields failed. Hull breached. Warning alarms screamed in her ears. She did not stop. She did not slow down. When she was close enough, she activated the weapon and spoke her last words into the void. "For Earth. For my children. For everyone you killed." Quantum destabilization field expanded at the speed of light. It hit the nearest warships first. They did not explode. They simply stopped existing. One moment they were there, firing their weapons, full of living beings. The next moment, they were gone. Not debris. Not radiation. Just empty space. The field kept growing. It reached the orbital stations and erased them. It reached the planet's atmosphere and began to consume it. On the surface, 18 billion beings looked up at the sky and saw a wall of nothing racing toward them. They had no time to scream. They had no time to pray. The field touched them, and they were gone. Every atom of their bodies scattered into the quantum foam. When the field finally stopped, there was nothing left. The planet, the stations, the warships, the moons, all gone. A civilization that had existed for 40,000 years had been erased in less than a minute. Nari Song died with them, but she died smiling. The hegemony received no warning. They had no explanation. Their capital, their homeworld, the seat of their power simply vanished. The leaders of 12 species stared at their sensors and tried to understand what they were seeing. 3 days later, it happened again. Valeth 7 was the homeworld of the hegemony's second species. 15 billion lived there. When the human ship appeared in their system, they did not even have time to raise their shields. Then Kryn, Major, then Asen Prime. 4 worlds in 2 weeks. 93 billion dead. Panic spread across the hegemony like fire through dry grass. For the first time in 40,000 years, the Masters knew fear. Species that had ruled the stars for millennia cowered in their ships, waiting for the flash of nothing that meant oblivion. The remaining High Council gathered in secret. On a hidden station at the edge of known space, Lord Korath was dead, erased with his homeworld. His successor was Lady Veth, an older female, with pale gray skin and eyes like black pools. She addressed the council with a voice that shook despite her efforts to control it. Now we face extinction. The slaves have become our executioners. We must find a way to stop this, or we will all die. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to negotiate. One species suggested destroying Earth in retaliation, burning the human homeworld to ashdot before they could decide. A message arrived. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language. It's impossible to block or ignore. Admiral Taiho Park appeared on their screens. He was old and broken, sitting in a floating chair, missing an arm. But his voice was strong, and his eyes burned with cold fire. You declared us slaves. You put chains in our minds. You killed our children and worked us to death in your mines. You thought we were animals. You were wrong. He paused, letting the words sink in. We have destroyed 4 of your worlds. We have 93 billion lives on our hands. We can destroy more. We can destroy all of you. Every world, every station, every ship. We can erase the Valdori hegemony from existence until there is nothing left but empty space and bad memories. The council listened in terrified silence. But we are offering you a choice. Release every human slave. Return our people to Earth. Dissolve your hegemony forever. Do this, and we will stop. Refuse, and we will continue until there is nothing left of you. He leaned forward, his ruined face filling the screen. You have 1 week to decide. If you touch Earth, if you harm a single human being, we will not negotiate again. We will simply destroy every world you have ever colonized, every station you have ever built, every ship you have ever launched. You will become a footnote in history, a warning to anyone who thinks they can chain humanity. The message ended. The council sat in stunned silence. Lady Veth looked around at the faces of her fellow leaders. She saw fear in every eye. She saw understanding. They had created this. They had enslaved a species they thought was primitive and weak. They had pushed humanity to the edge of extinction. And now that same species held the power to erase them all. What do we do? One of the council members asked. Lady Veth closed her eyes. She thought about 40,000 years of hegemony rule. She thought about the great empire they had built. She thought about everything they were about to lose. We surrender, she said. We have no choice. For the first time in history, the masters bowed to the slaves. The hegemony surrendered without ceremony. There was no treaty signing, no formal negotiation, no grand diplomatic event. The 12 species simply did what they were told, because the alternative was extinction. The surrender took 3 months to complete. Human slaves were released from mining colonies, factory stations, and labor camps across 100 star systems. Ships carried them back to Earth, load after load of broken people returning to a broken world. 50 million humans came home. That was all that remained of a species that had once numbered 12 billion. Yuna stood on the shore of what used to be Busan and watched the ships descend. The city behind her was ruins. Grass grew through cracked streets. Buildings stood empty, their windows dark like dead eyes. 7 years of alien rule had turned Earth into a graveyard. Bora found her there as the sun was setting. The former operative walked with a limp now, an injury from the final liberation raids that would never fully heal. She stood beside Yuna and watched the ships in silence. We won, Bora said finally. Yuna did not answer right away. She was thinking about the numbers. 4 worlds destroyed. 93 billion beings erased from existence. Families that would never come home. Children that would never grow up. All of them gone because of weapons she had built with her own hands. Did we? She asked. We killed 100 billion of them. Civilians. Children. Beings who never chose to hurt us. Bora was quiet for a long moment. The wind blew in from the sea, carrying the smell of salt and decay. They started this. They chose to enslave us. They chose to kill our people. We just finished what they began. I know, Yuna said, but I keep thinking about their children. They were innocent. They did not choose their leaders. They did not choose to be born into a species that enslaved others. And I killed them. All of them. You saved humanity, Bora replied. That has to count for something. Yuna nodded slowly, but her eyes were empty. I saved humanity by becoming a monster. I am not sure that counts for as much as you think. Across what remained of Earth, the survivors began to rebuild. General Desung Cho did not live to see it. He died 6 months after liberation, his old body finally giving up after decades of war. Admiral Taiho gave the eulogy at his funeral, speaking to a crowd of survivors gathered in the ruins of Seoul. He never stopped fighting, Taiho said, his voice rough with emotion. Even when victory was impossible. Even when everyone else had given up. He taught us that freedom is not given. It is taken. It is earned with blood and sacrifice and pain. We are free today because he refused to surrender. After the funeral, Taiho retired to a small farm in what used to be Gangwon province. He grew vegetables and raised chickens and never spoke about the war again. Sometimes he would sit on his porch at night and look up at the stars, thinking about all the people who had died so that humanity could survive. He passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 years later. The last of the original Unchained leaders, Commander Hajin Ryu, became the first president of the new government. They called it the United Earth Republic. His first act was to build a memorial, a wall listing the names of every human who had died under Valdor rule. It took 7,000 walls to hold all the names. The memorial stood in the center of New Seoul, and people came from all over the world to find the names of their loved ones. EUNG. Moon received awards and honors for her work on zero-point energy. She gave all the prize money to charity and used her fame to build schools on the devastated colony worlds. Children who had been born in slavery learned to read and write in classrooms named after human heroes. Yoonji taught some of the classes herself, showing young minds that knowledge was the most powerful weapon of all. The Wrath. Devices were locked away in a vault beneath the ice of Antarctica. They were guarded by automated weapons programmed to destroy them if anyone tried to steal them. The vault was designed to survive anything, to keep those terrible weapons safe for as long as humanity existed. No one wanted to use them again. But no one wanted to give them up either. Lady Veth, the last leader of the fallen hegemony, sent a final message before her species retreated to the far edges of the galaxy. It was addressed to all of humanity, and it was broadcast on every frequency. We underestimated you. We saw primitives. We saw livestock. We never saw the fire that burns inside you, the thing that makes humans fight even when there is no hope. We called you slaves, and you burned our worlds. History will remember us as fools. It will remember you as monsters. Perhaps we deserve each other. Yuna read the message alone in her laboratory on Europa. She sat there for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. About Sunwoo, dying alone in an alien mine. About the billions of beings she had killed. About the cost of survival. Then she deleted the message and walked. Outside, the ice stretched endlessly beneath Jupiter's glow. The sky was dark and full of stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was spreading across the galaxy, building new colonies, making new homes. They had survived the worst thing that had ever happened to their species. They had clawed their way back from extinction through sheer determination and rage. But some victories left scars that never healed. 100 years later, humanity was no longer a young species. They had built cities on 1,000 worlds. They had made contact with other civilizations beyond the old hegemony's borders. They were powerful and respected, and most of all, feared Ambassador Gi-woo Park. Great-granddaughter of the Admiral met with alien delegates from distant stars. They wanted trade. They wanted peace. And beneath their polite words, they wanted reassurance. Your ancestors destroyed entire civilizations, one delegate said carefully. How do we know you will not do the same to us? Gi-woo smiled. It was a smile that carried the weight of history. You do not, she said. That is the point. We hope we never have to use those weapons again. We want peace. We want friendship. But if anyone tries to chain us, if anyone threatens our survival, we will do whatever is necessary to protect ourselves. The delegates understood. Everyone in the galaxy understood. Humanity had learned something in the darkness of slavery. They had learned that mercy was a privilege of the powerful. They had learned that survival sometimes meant becoming the thing you hated. And they had learned that some chains could only be broken with fire. They had been slaves once. They would never be slaves again.